The wheels are falling off Donald Trump's administration, and I have to admit, it's always satisfying to say that. With resignations piling up in Congress and more on the way, along with departures inside Trump's own administration, one thing is obvious. MAGA is collapsing into its own internal civil war. That's why it was so shocking, though maybe not shocking at all at this point, that Trump suddenly ditched Pete Hegseth this weekend just as a major scandal was erupting. We're going to break all of that down, along with what it means for Trump's chaotic, corrupt, and increasingly dangerous foreign policy agenda. But before we dive in, if you could hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already, it really helps support the channel and keeps this work going. Now, before we talk about Trump throwing an obviously clueless and likely intoxicated Pete Hegseth under the bus, I want to start with something Republican Senator Rand Paul recently said about Trump's fake anti-war persona. Take a look at this clip.
Because of your position on Homeland Security, you may have some insight into the drug cartels. You are also on Senate Foreign Relations, and it is tomorrow that the Trump administration officially will designate the Cartel de los Soles as a foreign terrorist organization. That's the cartel the Trump administration says is linked to Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. Secretary Hegseth says it gives the administration new tools. Nothing's on or off the table, he says, militarily. Legally, what changes tomorrow? What becomes possible?
I think by doing this, they're pretending as if we are at war. They're pretending as if they've gotten some imprimatur to do what they want. When you have war, the rules of engagement are lessened. So, for example, we normally don't shoot boats that we suspect of being drug dealers. In fact, if the Coast Guard tomorrow started shooting all vessels that are off of Miami or off of San Diego, about 1 in 4 of the vessels that they normally board doesn't have drugs. So it actually would be unlawful if the Coast Guard started blowing up boats. But for some reason, they say, oh, we're at war off the coast of Venezuela, and so it's a different rule of engagement. It's one of war. But, you know, Senator Kaine and I brought this up, and we said if it's war, let's declare it as war. Let's have this discussion. Is it war or not? And the administration refused that. They want to have it both ways. They want to say, oh, we can just say these people are terrorists or narco-terrorists, so we can blow them up. But it's extraordinary that when some of them survive, they pluck them out of the water. They don't prosecute them for drugs. They don't collect drugs. They don't tell us if they were armed or not. They just send them back to their country, most of the time not being Venezuela. They've sent one back to Colombia and one back to Ecuador, but nobody's making any pretense of even interviewing them to find out who's selling you the drugs. Maybe we could find out who the kingpins are if they're involved in the drug trade. Not a word. And I've been given zero, not one briefing, because I'm skeptical of what they're doing. They don't brief me or the General Senate at all. A few hand-selected people may have gotten a briefing, but I have not been invited to any briefings on Venezuela.
Everyone can see what's happening. Everyone can see the lies. Donald Trump has spent this entire presidency telling people to ignore their own eyes on every issue he ran on. Prices are up. Trump insists they aren't. He's bombing targets indiscriminately in international waters, despite claiming to be anti-war, and still tells the public not to believe what's right in front of them. The Epstein cover-up is one of the most blatant scandals we've ever witnessed, and he continues to demand that people look the other way. But no one is looking away, especially now that it's been exposed that Trump is literally echoing talking points straight from Vladimir Putin. We suspected it from the start. We said it repeatedly, and we were called crazy for it. But now, who looks foolish? Senator Mark Kelly called all of this out clearly. And before we get into how it all ties back to Pete Hegseth, let's start with what he said.
Get to you on Ukraine because there's so much happening, and I know you're such a big supporter of Ukraine. There are 3 prominent U.S. senators who have gone on the record now, including Republican Mike Rounds, who said yesterday Secretary of State Rubio told them he was unaware of a threat to cut off U.S. support to Ukraine if they don't accept this proposed plan that's on the table. Here is how Senator Rounds described it.
What he told us was that this was not the American proposal, This was a proposal which was received by someone who has identified and they believe to be representing Russia in this proposal. It was given to Mr. Witkoff.
So since those remarks were made and backed up by multiple senators, I've received phone calls from senior White House officials, from senior U.S. officials saying, no, that's not at all what Secretary Rubio said. What version of events do we believe here in terms of what America is putting forward?
Margaret, they've got to clear this up. You have Rubio's talking to my Senate colleagues saying one thing, the spokesperson for the State Department saying another. Your conversations with the White House contradict what the Secretary of State and, by the way, the National Security Advisor, same guy, has said about this. They've got to figure this out and get the message out and explain to the American people what's going on. I will say this, that plan, that's Putin's plan. That is a very good deal for Russia. It is a horrible deal for Ukraine, for our allies, and even for our own national security. If Putin gets the chance with that deal to, rearm, rebuild his economy, and gained territory, by the way, that's what he wanted. Well, then the Baltics, Poland, Romania, all those other countries down the line are at threat.
So were we crazy for thinking the guy who loves Vladimir Putin constantly talks about how much he loves Vladimir Putin? Apparently, according to Jeffrey Epstein's brother, Putin has some photos of Donald Trump with Bubba, whether that be a certain former president, some saying it might be a horse. It doesn't matter who it is. There's a Putin connection now with Epstein and Trump, so that should make us all feel great. We were crazy for saying that this guy was taking talking points from Russia when Russian state TV said Trump was taking talking points from Russia, and now it has been proven that Trump was taking talking points from Russia, and we're crazy. Yeah, I don't really think so, but as Donald Trump was trying to resolve this all and calm tensions with Republican senators who are freaking out over one of the biggest scandals we've ever seen. Who got on the phone after this leaked? Well, it wasn't Donald Trump's Secretary of Defense. Margaret Brennan reported that a senior White House official told CBS that there was a call last night held by Vice President Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, along with Army Secretary Driscoll and U.S. military leadership, in order to answer questions from some concerned lawmakers about this report about Trump just taking talking points from Russia. Ron Filipowski of Midas Touch pointed out that it was a Saturday night. So Hegseth, who wasn't on the call, was likely in no condition to participate, of course, because he was probably putting it back a couple of beers. And likely in an effort to make up for Donald Trump turning his back on Pete Hegseth, and the Pentagon are now investigating Senator Mark Kelly over illegal order video, the one that he put out with several Democratic lawmakers, and are now threatening a court-martial. Again, Ron Filipowski of Midas Touch, thinking the same thing as me of Pete Hegseth writing such a small, petty, insecure loser. The Trump administration didn't trust this drunken fool anywhere near the Ukraine negotiations, so they sent the SEC of the Army instead. So this clown needs to play more stupid games. So, in Donald Trump's moment of crisis, when he needs answers, when he needs conflicts resolved, and when Republican lawmakers are openly furious with him over this scandal, who does he not call? Pete Hegseth. He calls the Secretary of the Army. He calls Marco Rubio. He even calls J.D. Vance, who has virtually no political experience. But Pete Hegseth completely sidelined. Not a call, not a mention, nowhere to be seen. As this information keeps leaking, Trump seems to have decided, yeah, maybe don't bring in the guy with a long history of leaking. What does that tell you about the state of Trump's relationship with Hegseth? And keep in mind, rumors are already circulating inside the administration that someone might be getting the boot before the midterms. Maybe Bondi over the handling of the Epstein documents. Maybe Kash Patel for the same reason. Maybe Kristi Noem because she's been generally incompetent. And yes, maybe Pete Hegseth too. Trump wants a head to roll because he knows how deeply unpopular this chaotic administration has become. So, as always, Pete Hegseth performs for his audience of one, Donald Trump. His job clearly isn't to serve the American people or protect the country. What a wild concept that would be. Instead, he's now claiming he'll call Senator Mark Kelly back into service just to court-martial him. Why? Because Kelly had the basic common sense to say, if Donald Trump orders you to break the law, don't do it. Trump twisted that into some massive insult, acting like Kelly told people to disobey every order. No, he said illegal orders. Why did Trump assume that meant all of his orders? Does he think every instruction he gives is illegal? Kind of revealing, isn't it? And the truth is, a lot of them are illegal, bypassing Congress to strike Iran, indiscriminately hitting innocent fishermen in international waters. These are crimes. Trump is breaking the law. So yes, service members should refuse illegal orders. And Pete Hegseth, who has no credibility here, pretending he's taking the moral high ground, please. It's all theater. All of them perform for Trump because he knows he's vulnerable right now. That's what we need to keep emphasizing. He is weak. He is scared, and he does not want the public to understand how deeply fractured MAGA and his entire White House have become. Everything is falling apart around him, and that's why we have to keep exposing it. On the Epstein files, on the lies, on all of it. And Senator Amy Klobuchar did exactly that, calling Trump out on this scandal, on his threats, and so much more in a clip you absolutely need to see.
Well, what is dangerous is not restating what is in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which says that our troops cannot follow unlawful orders very clearly. What is dangerous is the President of the United States threatening these members of Congress with death, literally saying that they should be executed. As Mark Kelly said, he is someone who has flown a plane that a missile ran nearly on that plane. He has taken in anti-aircraft fire. He has launched into space, into orbit on behalf of his country. And he never thought that a president of the United States would try to execute him or to tell people. This is not at all a game. My dear friend, Melissa Hortman, the former Speaker of the House, and her husband were killed in cold blood with someone who was engaging in political violence. That was the shooter. Or my other friends there took, between them, a husband and wife, 17 shots. Or what happened to Charlie Kirk, that assassination. Members of Congress threats have gone from 1,600 to over 14,000 in just a few years, and that is every year. That's what we're dealing with right now.
I hear what you're saying about those horrific acts of political violence, Senator. I wonder, do you know what the specific illegal acts are that your Democratic colleagues were referring to there?
Well, it's very clear in this code for the military that you cannot follow unlawful orders. And, you know, that would be, I'll just use an example. Some of the judges have now found in certain cities that it is not legal to send in the National Guard. And those National Guard members have come home. Some of them are still there. But if their commander were to tell them, hey, go out on the streets and do this and that, that's not following the order that is in law. So I just use that example. I'm sure my colleagues would have others. But the key is, this has been a long-time tenet of the American military. And it is very clearly right there, and that is all our colleagues were saying, and they have every right to say it. They have served our country bravely, they know what they're talking about, and then this president's answer was to basically tell them, he retweeted someone else saying they should be hanged.
We have to keep pressing this issue every single moment, and we will continue doing that right here on this show. If you want to support the work, make sure to hit the subscribe button and drop a like on the video. Stay strong, keep speaking out, and don't let anyone shut you down. Until next time, I'll see you soon.